Hello survivors and welcome to another video. In this video we're taking a first look at Michelle, who is obviously part of the Whisperer event which is going on right now. We're going to check her out as a 5-star in terms of her look. She has actually got incredibly high damage stat for a 5-star, it has to be said. And if we look at her 5-star, she's a Whisperer. When we see her as a 6-star, she's still a Whisperer, but she gets a shirt, she gets attached weapon, she gets blades attached to her legs. She's much more dangerous looking, obviously. Now she is a fast traded damage roll character, and her attack stat does reflect this massively well. 2,286 is insane amounts of damage. She has got very low defense though, with 1,306 and 1,851 HP, but that's kind of how damage dealers roll in terms of having lower defense, higher attack. That's kind of how it goes. We'll look at the adrenaline rush. It is called Paint Them Crimson. I do like the name of this rush, and it is a 76 AP rush, deal 550% damage, 450 bleed damage for 2 turns, and stun for 2 turns up to 2 enemies. So the way I'm reading this is 2 enemies are going to get 550% damage taken and 450 bleed for 2 turns. They're also going to get stunned. That's how I'm reading that. All of that is happening to 2 enemies for 2 turns basically, except the 550% damage. That's just the initial damage. That's quite a lot of damage on base, and obviously that's the same as Shiva, but obviously her base attack is huge compared to Shiva. The 450 bleed is nice, especially if you've got lacerator characters in your lineup, and the stun for 2 turns is such a nice little bonus. Although stun resist is pretty much everywhere, a 2-turn stun is very, very powerful. Now we'll look at her active skill, and it isn't like spectacular. It has got an initial cooldown of 2, and up to 2 teammates gain 35% AP. So she is like a semi-command with her active skill. You could say potentially she could command 2 people. And I would say she's more of an attack team character looking at her full kit. But I don't think her active skill is spectacular, and you can pretty much avoid putting that up if you want to. However, because she's an attack team character, she's going to go off generally when you want her to. So there's no real downside of putting Ulysses in to get this active skill up, unless you're short on Ulysses, unless you're short on those active skill trainers. Now she is a leader rather than a specialist. Obviously, when you see her rush, you'd maybe think Lacerator would work really well with this. But her leader skill is really good, and this leader skill is a direct counter to the Eric defense teams. Obviously, it's a hard counter to Eric defense teams, but it's also Eric defense teams a hard counter to this leader skill. It's basically you're going all in. All fast and alert teammates get 40% attack and a huge bonus to AP when attacking. This is exactly what you want to try and take down Eric as quickly as possible. Obviously, Eric teams are tough and strong. They are going to do trait damage to these 2 traits, but they're going to take trait damage from these 2 traits. And if you gear a really good attacking team, you know, you can take Decapitate Sandy behind this Michelle. You can take some really nice fast characters, alert characters. You could potentially take Alice behind Michelle, and that would work really well against those sort of teams. Fast damage traits are going to just destroy the tough characters. Eric's going to get melted. If you have someone who has defense down, it's going to be really good like Dale. Eric's just going to not last very long at all. So this character is geared specifically towards being an anti-Eric defense team character. So if you can get your hands on her in this event, you're going to be very happy. And I think, you know, you should try and get your hands on her in an event. We have gone through the event in a previous video if you want to check that out, but it isn't clear whether this character is going to be attainable just from actually hitting the milestones, from actually doing everything in the event. Kind of like what happened in Road Warrior, where you could hit everything in the event and still have to pay at the end to actually get one of the better characters. It potentially could be the same for Michelle, unfortunately. However, if you did do that for Sandy, Michelle is obviously Generation 2, and her lead skill is very unique. In terms of, there is no other lead skills, even within promo, that have got this sort of lead skill. And Eric is a massive problem for pretty much everybody right now, unless you're like at the top echelons of promos, in terms of you've got all the characters available, especially the ones that have been released recently in Gen 2. And free-to-play just don't have the availability of good attack characters within Generation 2. A lot of them, pretty much all of them so far, have been defensive. Now she has got an attached weapon, so we'll check that out as well. and it's just an attacking weapon. 30% attack, a medium bonus to AP when attacking. That's obviously the upgrade slot. Now her rush is 76, so you would need to upgrade that to at least very large. Hopefully you get huge, just a little bonus, doesn't mean too much. And then the last slot is bleeding. When attacking, a better chance to cause 400 bleed damage for 2 turns to the enemy. So you really need to have a lacerator character to really take advantage of all the bleed that Michelle can bring. But you could potentially change that for something else. I'd probably just keep it to just keep her damage output as high as possible. Because obviously she stuns 2 characters, they're going to take an extra 900 damage from the rush. The bleed could go off on basic attacks as well. You just got to make sure that your decapitates are getting those last hits in to actually decapitate characters rather than the bleed killing characters, and then obviously potentially those characters just getting revived again. So there is obviously downsides to having bleed, but it can bypass bonus HP, although bonus HP is not a huge problem within Eric teams. It's mainly within the fast teams, but she could potentially be used against, you know, fast defense teams. She could be used against, you know, Lydia teams. She could be used against Gabriel teams. You are going to maybe take some trait damage if you've got fast characters in there, but there is potential. You just got to maybe do that risk reward. You can of course use Jesus Shield on attack and just use him and defend with him, and then all of those attacking characters behind Jesus Shield are going to be massively defended. He's going to get those absolute defends off, and your damage output is just going to be absolutely huge. You can gear 100% towards damage with your combat mods, with your weapons, and just basically have 0 risk. You should be winning raids pretty quickly. So that's Michelle, and we'll find out soon enough if we can actually get our hands on her from this event. If you can, I would try and basically make that your goal, because she's a very good character. She's going to be useful for a long time because she's 76 AP. That 76 AP is going to be useful for a long time. Her lead skill is great. 40% attack and a huge bonus when attacking is great. And the fact that she completely counters, or like it's a hard counter towards Eric, means she's going to be really useful for war. She's going to be useful for raids, and she's going to make life a lot easier. But that's the end of my video, guys. Do tell me what you think about Michelle. Are you going to hope to obviously go for her, or are you going to go for those mods from this event instead? But that's the end of my video. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, guys, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.